Coming to you live from a cabin deep in the heart of the Canadian wilderness. Turn down the lights, get yourself a drink, and let's settle in for tonight's broadcast. Good evening, and welcome to Midnight Mysteries. Here are your hosts.
Syncing with camera.
I need a louder clap.
Do it.
Fail. Okay. Go ahead.
Welcome back to Midnight Mysteries, the heart of Canadian Paranormal Radio. My name is Nathan.
And my name is Mike. Today we're interviewing a special guest and talking about the paranormal. If you want to learn more about these kind of topics like ghosts, the paranormal, cryptids, and more, click that subscribe button.
Tonight we have Erika. Erika is a visual artist, a francophone facilitator for Big Brothers Big Sisters Canada, and the host for Erika's Ghost Stories podcast. They were born on Vancouver Island and have ancestral ties to Quebec and currently reside on Treaty 6 territory, Edmonton, Alberta. Erika is a queer artist who loves to write, draw, and work with children. She also loves to hit up the mountains, do some camping, and travel for fun. Erika, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Yes, that's me in a nut.
So in terms of your upbringing, in terms of your background, was there the belief in spirituality or the paranormal in your family? And if so, what did that look like? Did your grandparents or parents ever talk about it or share their experiences?
Yes, I would love to share that. Yes. Okay, so growing up, we actually were in a Catholic but non-practicant situation, as all French people are. So two of my parental figures were my dad's wife and my mom, so two women. They both believed in ghosts. And yeah, from the get-go, it was very open communication about it. Growing up, also, we lived in a haunted house, so...
That'll help.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't have a chance. You were you were right in there.
Right in there.
Born into
11
it.
years old, right in. Yeah, and when I was about 12... my stepmom gave me a little light magic book, and that's kind of like where the opening was, of like this like outer spiritual, outer from the skin, I mean, like more than what it is. So yeah, I mean, my, it was right away.
Yeah.
Just immersed.
Just a child.
You were born, your parents and this other maternal figure were
Yes.
like, hey, this is the religion we're taking part of as part of the Francophone culture, but we also are open to this. And the house is haunted.
Yeah.
And here's a book on magic.
Yes.
Okay, but like...
Paranormal stories to the nines.
Right? So the house is haunted. You can't just leave it at that.
No. I mean,
you got to tell.
Well, yeah. I mean, so we think, because we were like three girls growing up in that house anyways. There was my stepmom and my sister. And we think that it was a little girl ghost.
Okay.
And she would connect with her like feminine energy. And so this one time, nobody was in the house except for my stepmom. And she said for sure she heard a voice and she thought it was us. And she's like, oh yeah, like... She answered the voice, and then me and my sister get back home, and she's like, oh, it wasn't you two? And then that's where we kind of was like, oh, like maybe there's something else, and like let's explore that together. And me and my sister were really into horror movies, which didn't help this whole case because we're just like ghosts and like everything related to that. Yeah. So my sister was like, I see her in this, and there's dreams, and yeah, like that's just how it began. So the house was haunted. It was a friendly ghost.
That's good.
Yeah. It was a friendly ghost.
Yeah. It's not like crawling up onto your bed or anything.
No. Nothing like that. No poltergeist.
So you were really immersed in this, like we talked about from the get-go. But was there a major red pill moment where you're just like, wow, there has to be more than this, just this physical world. Like there has to be more than this.
Yeah.
Or was that just always the case for you?
No, like as an adult, I got into sacred geometry and numerology, and I my birthday is like 3 days from Halloween, so I already knew I loved this time of year, and I'm a huge fan of ghost stories. I love discovering about the unknown and knowing the paranormal. I look through investigations all the time. This is all up my alley. Literally, I am just so intrigued by the fact that buildings, peoples, and things can be haunted. And it always has been that way. And there are just thousands and millions of stories, and just tapping into that. But I think just naturally I was interested in these subjects right off the bat. None of these subjects were obviously talked about in high school,
of course, math
and science, but some of science actually touched in on it too. In grade 10 I watched Down the Rabbit Hole, which was about quantum physics. And that really tied into adulthood when I was exploring these subjects as well. Right. So I was there was that science teacher that was there's more to life.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
So tying science in there and mathematics at a later age. I didn't know that math was related to existence and nature until adulthood. So in those.
And it's so interesting to look at some of these founding fathers and mothers of different areas in science and how esoteric or religious they were too, because it wasn't simply just the physical world, but there was a belief in the beyond too. Yeah. And I think of one of the areas that got me really interested in things like sacred geometry or numerology, which Mike and I could talk about for hours as well, was the Fibonacci sequence, and seeing that the same calculations and spiral found in a seashell is the same used in sacred architecture or the defining spirals of a galaxy. It's
and
just
a tree, how the tree grows, and it's just intrinsically in every little aspect of our reality.
To how bees form hives,
absolutely,
and crop circles, and that is
Fibonacci is really
Wait, bees form crop circles? Just kidding.
That's on our next episode.
Giant bees.
So you started your podcast around 2 years ago. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
Yeah, about February 2021. So 2.5.
Okay. Yeah. So what inspired you to start podcasting? What inspired you to start sharing these ghost stories? Because obviously it's a huge interest in your life, but what made you go, I need to share what I'm learning? Was there a specific haunting you read about or a place you visited that made you say, people need to hear this stuff?
I started out with just getting podcast equipment, not really knowing in the direction that I wanted to go in. And I decided on ghost stories because it's a subject I could talk about and for hours at a time. I love a good ghost story. So yes, a part of me, wanted to figure out and dive into haunted places such as the Charles Camsell Hospital on the north side, or the Princess Theater on White Ave in Edmonton, and of course the Banff Springs hotels. So a lot of the locations that I started with were local and in Alberta, and then I kind of just went around the world globally with it, different places around the world that would be, haunted or have paranormal activities.
Areas of interest.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so I think it's just kind of open, and some of the hauntings when I read, I read a book by Shannon Sin called The Hauntings of Vancouver Island. Have you guys ever heard of it?
I have not.
No, I've got a couple Canadian ghost stories books, but I've been looking for more. So.
Yeah, that one's really good. In it, there was a Valencia Phantom ship story, and I read it, and I was I have to do this. Sometimes it just comes to me in random books, or that one book has 25 stories in it, and I just picked one, and I'm this one really hit it for me.
Yeah.
So
the Valencia Phantom ship.
Yes.
Could you expand on that at all, or can you give us a summary of it?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's kind of our
What if
West
she said
Coast,
no? What if she was no?
No.
It's a secret.
You'll have to listen to the episode. All right.
Plugged.
So, it's also referred to the Canadian Titanic tragedy on the West Coast, right? Because the East Coast was the other one. But And it's off of Vancouver Island, of course. In the early 1900s, a captain who was doing the route for the first time kind of went from Seattle to, you go through the Juan de Fuca, which is like from the States, you go in a canal and then back to the States kind of,
Right.
but you
Oh,
hit
cool.
you
That's
hit the
interesting.
Vancouver Island right there. So he was doing the turn, but it was his first time. So he unfortunately did not see that there was this massive cliff, and the ship hit the cliff twice. There was a lot of passengers on it. They were so close to shore. It was aggressive. The waves were crashing. There were lifeboats that were not properly inflated. They all went down when they weren't supposed to. And it was a tragedy. Like, think like just hundreds of people just panicking. And like for years after, people have spotted this apparition and like visions of the scene. Like there's still pieces there of the shipwreck to this day. And yeah, like it's like a phantom ship. They'll see the scene. Like that's what the illusion is. It's just like the ship and just the scene
Interesting.
itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one was really interesting. Like there's a lot of shipwrecks on Vancouver Island, but that one in particular had, I think there was like 130 passengers and only 30 survived.
Oh, wow.
So it was like really, it was a big tragedy.
Yeah.
Interesting story.
There's something so, for lack of a better word, haunting about ghost ship stories. I don't know
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
is. It's like there's something about ships and hauntings that go together that always catch my attention. I don't know what it is. But
Yeah. Well, and it
it's really
sounds
cool.
almost similar to the actual Titanic story too, where they didn't have enough rafts available.
Yeah.
There was just a number of different things that went wrong at the same time on top of the tragedy. So,
Right.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Like from 0 to 100 panic mode
Yeah.
type of,
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So that's one of your favorite stories to talk about.
I have another one.
Sure,
But I'll let
please
you.
do. Dive
okay.
in.
All right.
Yeah.
So there is another one too. It's the Hoia Baciu Forest in Transylvania.
Oh, yes.
Romania.
Yeah.
And it's also referred to the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. It's said to have the most well-documented paranormal activity on the planet. We're talking like ghosts, disappearances, time traveling, devil stuff, aliens, shadow people. There was one story of like a young girl like disappearing and showing up 4 years later, the same age, in the same clothes,
weird.
with the same coins in her pocket.
Yeah.
There's just a few things in that forest that you're like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a good one too.
There seems to be a forest like that almost in every country too.
Do you think we have one here?
You know, I've heard some
Yeah.
crazy stuff about the Edmonton River Valley too.
No
Yeah,
way.
just some. It's the largest urban-based forest in Canada, something like that. The largest urban center-based forest in Canada or North America, and you know, everything from spooky sounds to weird animals to cryptids and UFO sightings. Like there's a lot.
There's also Nahini Valley. So it's up in Northwest Territories,
Right, yeah.
kind of in the southwest corner.
Okay.
Super remote. You can only get up there by plane, right? Like you can't drive. Like it's very remote. And you know what? You've probably seen pictures of the falls that are there. I think no, it's not Angel Falls. Can't remember what it's called, but huge waterfall there that's pretty well known by picture, but not a place most people visit. Anyways, there's a long story that I won't get fully into here, but gold prospectors used to go up through that valley, and there was all kinds of stories of like giants and finding decapitated bodies in the valley.
Just
Um,
there.
and
When?
like, this was during the gold rush.
Okay. So, early.
1800s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So highly recommend looking into that because it's a really cool
Interesting.
story. Yeah, I would love to go up there, but that's a journey.
Yeah.
There's another one. There's the dubbed by Westerners suicide forest in Japan.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I've
yeah.
heard of that one.
Yeah.
And since like the 1700s, it's been known as the suicide forest. There's a word for it in Japanese, which I don't remember, but it was known as a place where people would be drawn to commit suicide, and
Scary.
they call it the just pulling it up here. It's called The Ghosts of the Dead in Japanese mythology. And it's so prevalent there. When I was in Japan, they've got all these signs out in front of the forest saying, if you're feeling suicidal, here are helplines. And because that's how
So
many
you've
people
been
have
there?
gone. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I
wow.
didn't go through the forest. I was in Japan for a very, very brief amount of time. But yeah, it's just become so not popular, because that's a
Well,
terrible
there's
word
movies
for it, but
on
well
it.
known.
Yeah.
Well known. Yeah, I think I watched a documentary on it specifically on that or something. I'm not sure.
There's
but-
also I can't remember what it's called. It was a pretty interesting movie, but it was like based on the story, right? Like it wasn't
Oh, yeah.
documentary. It was like a horror.
Oh
It was
yeah,
pretty
I might have
creepy.
seen that too.
Yeah,
I
it was
don't know.
pretty creepy.
Yeah. There was, there's also forests here in Alberta relating to Sasquatch mythology as well, or
Nordeg
Bigfoot,
area.
Well,
Nordeg
that
area.
NWT
Yeah.
story really got me thinking. It's like Sasquatch territory if it's remote and there's no
Yeah.
roads and there's turns
Yeah.
up of bodies, like for sure.
And so this is perfect. But is there another type of haunting that just keeps you awake at night, or made you go, wow, this stuff is not just interesting, but really freaky or really spooky?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had sleep paralysis.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So,
you don't
I mean-
even need an episode.
No,
to be-
I mean, for sure, some things like creep me up at night or keep me up, creep me up,
Yeah.
keep me up.
Up at night.
But it's nothing I can't handle, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
know
for
my field of energy and just So nothing that keeps me up. It's just
Yeah.
I'm trying to interact with it and just in a positive way, or at least
Sure.
get rid of it.
Owning your space.
Yeah,
Like Mike
exactly.
and I are very much along the same lines of
Yeah.
you need to own your home. And-
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So since we've dived into the topic of other topics unrelated to ghost stories, your podcast is based on ghost stories, history, and hauntings, but are you interested in any other paranormal topics? Do you believe in Bigfoot? Are aliens real? Do you think there's a giant conspiracy to hide all of this from us? What's your thoughts on some of the other areas of the paranormal?
I mean, yes, and yes. So, yeah, like I'm from Western Canada, so I of course, I believe in Bigfoot,
Yeah.
for sure. How could I not? I've watched like countless documentaries. I would 100% think that they've adapted to avoid and hide from humans, which claps to them.
Yeah.
Good job.
Respect.
I mean, I would too, for sure. But yeah, aliens, yeah, sure. We can't go without like saying that like we're not the most intelligent species in the universe. Like we think we are. Surely someone's out there's got futuristic technology or something.
Right.
I believe in higher dimensions. So third dimension is the one we live in, but like I believe in a fourth and a multitude of dimensions
Yeah,
that
totally.
exist within each other. So I do also, think telepathy could, maybe be true. It's not that I've experienced it 100%, but I'm open to it. Angels, aliens to others, sometimes like you are communicating with either your higher self or just other beings or just in meditation.
Yeah.
Do I think there's a conspiracy to hide it? It's tough because, like, I think humans can hide this information from other humans. Sure. Mind control happening, I think, to some degree,
Yeah.
like,
Truth is somewhere up the
Yeah.
middle,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah, usually is.
Yeah.
yeah, like conspiracy is always a gray zone because, like, I want to be made aware of it just to know that it exists. And if you're asking the right questions and looking for in the right places, like, you will have access to the information, especially now that the internet's leaked documents and whatever of alien existence, photographic evidence. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm francophone, so sometimes these
No, that's a tough word.
Photographic? Yeah.
photographic. There we
Yeah.
go. And people's
The
personal
way you said it sounds so much better.
and like people's personal experiences.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
mean,
yeah.
that makes it all worthy. And
Yeah.
like ultimately, if aliens wanted to make themselves known, they would have succeeded, and we would have known their presence.
Let's be honest,
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the arguments with that too is like if they were if they were trying to hide, it's like showing up as a light in the sky and moving
Yeah.
at 90-degree arcs isn't really hiding. And I think my favorite reports when I was an investigator for MUFON was, you know, the little old farmers that had been there for generations that had no interest in the paranormal. They never really watched the skies. And then all of a sudden they have something crazy happen. They see a big giant craft or one of their cows gets mutilated. And so they go Googling report weird light in the sky and they come across MUFON. Those are definitely the most interesting stories to me.
Mm.
And with conspiracies and stuff too, I think, you know, it's a mix of, you know, there is groups, shadowy groups, sketchy groups hiding things, but at the same time, government negligence is very real.
Oh, yeah.
We won't go down that path.
No.
But-
Not this week.
Yeah, not this week. Yeah, that'll be a 20
We need like 10,
series.
yeah.
The government. Wow.
Yeah.
But what you're saying about mind blank conspiracy theories is like, I don't know. There's so many different definitions that people have, and like it's been politicized. Let's be honest, like everything these days.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, a conspiracy theorist is just someone questioning things. They're not just following, you know, whatever was told to them. It's like, well, maybe that's not true. Maybe this is true. So it depends on how you look at it, right?
Well, yeah. And like, weren't the first photos of UFOs, like, those people were considered crazy and they were
100%.
considered conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just a real photo
Yeah.
that wasn't
Yeah.
manipulated or anything
Yeah.
from the 50s or 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we do a pretty good job staying apolitical on the podcast.
For
but
sure.
even with like the Vietnam War, the people who questioned like, wait, is this just the government's attempt to grab at resources and to occupy another area? Those were called conspiracy theorists too. Those are people, anybody who
Terrorist.
questions the government is generally called a conspiracy theorist
Yeah,
on either
exactly.
side. Now, some of them definitely should be called conspiracy
More than
theorists.
others,
just
yeah.
because,
Yeah. There's different levels.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, ultimately, like, what do they say? Like, it's a puppet and there's just people behind it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter who's the face of it.
That's right.
Yes.
So.
Do I believe the president or the prime minister is a reptilian being themselves?
Yes.
I mean, slightly.
I guess character-wise, yeah, they're a bit slimy. But is there a group of freaky things behind them? You know,
Probably.
totally. That's a lot more realistic. So,
Right.
So Erika, when you start sharing this stuff, or when you go to a party, is it easier for you to talk about these types of things?
No, obviously, I definitely only talk about it with like close friends and like people who like safe spaces,
Yes.
people who are into communicating about it. It's not that the conversation isn't there. It's just I like to dive deep sometimes, and there's only surface level people sometimes, and you're like, okay, I need a deeper conversation.
Yeah.
I need to say what's out there.
Yeah. One of our reels, one of our volunteers just shared
what I was
recently
thinking
was there's text saying, hey, it took a lot for us to get you invited to the party. Please just act normal. And then it says me 5 minutes into the party, you know, there's a group behind a group that is controlling every
That's
aspect
me.
of our
Yeah. That's Nathan too.
It 100% is. And I can't tell you how many times I've made a comment, and I've gotten better. But how many times I've made a comment and they're like, yeah, I could see some people believing that. I don't, but I could see.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a fun area to dive into.
Yeah, I've been in that situation too, where it's like you're just having a conversation, and they're like, "But have we been on the moon?" And they're like, "Oh my God, you think we didn't go on the moon?" And I'm like, "Okay, all right, we're there."
I'm just asking questions.
And then I become this person who thinks we didn't go to the moon, and it's like, okay, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
But I also don't think, sorry, but candidly, I don't think we went to the moon.
Yeah.
Humans.
Yeah. And a good conversation I had with somebody the other day was, just anytime I've brought up UFOs, there's this guard that goes up with them. And I'm like, okay, our former defense minister, Paul Hellier, came out and said, yeah, I've helped hide UFOs for years. Like France's
It's a
intelligence
thing.
secretary, like these are high level people that have come out and been like, yeah, UFOs are real. I'm like, if these people came out and said anything else was real, you would probably trust them. But when it comes to some sort of paranormal or conspiracy area, it's like people just, I think it kind of freaks them out a bit.
Same with science and that spiritual stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have, some people are just very logical, need physical proof, and some people just feel it out, and it's more of a, like an experience, might I say. But some people need tangible evidence, which is fair.
Totally.
And it's the same on that too, right?
Yeah.
It's like, people can say they had it, but unless there's, they see it with their own eyes or they have the experience themselves, they're just like, oh, it's just people talking about it and they're crazy or something, right? Or like a write-off of some sort. But I mean, so many pilots came out saying for years and years and years, like, come on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike and I have been pretty good at citing our quotes and stories in our episodes, but at the same time there's plenty of topics where Mike and I are like, we don't necessarily have this evidence, but this is what we are sensing about this. And I'm sure you're probably the same way too, where it's just
for me, my podcast is like, it's stories I've read on the internet, and it's like secondhand stories. Sometimes some people will just be like, and I will be very honest on the podcast and be like, it's said, or there was a story about, I won't say it's a factual thing because it is just a story. And as much as storytelling, there is some truths to it. Of course, it changes as you go, and
But with your episodes, you've done a great job at blending the historical as well as the paranormal with it, and I appreciate that about your episodes. How long does it take you to write each episode, would you say? Is there an average for how long it takes to produce and record? And
I would say a good morning, so 4 or 5 hours to write it, and then maybe an hour or two to record, and then half hour to edit.
Yeah.
I don't edit much because I just edit in the moment that I record.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, less than a day makes an episode. But sometimes I will gather resource and links throughout months and just have something on the back burner. For example, my latest was Banff Springs Hotel. So I had that one in a folder with a bunch of links and a bunch of resource links for months and months since I started the podcast. I was like, one day I'll do this episode. And then finally came to it.
There's a couple of episodes where Mike and I have recorded and then just had to scrap because it hasn't worked out, or we haven't been able to get all the information. And those kill me too, because we just spend so much time and then it doesn't.
Yeah, that would kill me too. I would hate that.
Now, with your role with Big Brothers and Big Sisters Canada, which thank you so much. These are not easy areas to get into at all. But have you ever talked to some of the kids about their paranormal experiences, or have any of them ever shared something that's happened that you've helped unpack? Okay.
No.
Okay.
I've only worked with Big Brothers, Big Sisters for the last year.
Okay.
So no. When I was younger and I worked as a preschool teacher, probably when I was about 22 or 23, I did get a couple of students where I remember some of the stories were intense, but I also don't know if it was fed by the parents. You just never know. You have to feel it out. But this one kid was telling me about having multiple dreams of having a life on Jupiter and being a different species, a slimy species that they all got killed off, and they were on spaceships to come to Earth. Yeah. It was this elaborate story that, a kid, it was just, that one story you're like, was that was weird. Okay. And I kept asking, and they're like, I asked my parents in this life, or he didn't say in this life. He said, I asked my parents that they welcome my mom from Jupiter because I know she's coming. And and just, then I would talk to the parents after, and they'd be like, yeah, we do believe in not paranormal. What was I going to say? Reincarnation. We do believe his stories, and we do we don't feed in. It's not really that they said they feed into it, but they're they encourage it, and they're like, okay, tell us more. So I don't know how to take that one-on-one with the kid. I did believe it. I was
Right.
like, whoa,
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me? Like, this
Yeah.
is, and he was like, they're like way ahead of us and it's a way bigger. And like, there was another species that came and like destroyed our species. And he was just, it was just a good story.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was,
But it's pretty specific too.
it
That's
was
really
very
interesting.
specific. And
Yeah.
when I asked the parents about it, they also were like, yeah, I don't know. He just came up with that stuff. And I was like, okay.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, at
yeah.
the very least, he has a future in story writing. Right?
Yeah.
He's
Right?
At the very least, he's
Yes,
creative.
preschool writer
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, and it's so mind blowing to think about how young of a species we are compared to, you know,
Maybe others.
the universe. Just the
Yeah.
fact that we didn't discover dinosaurs until what, the 1700s, and it's like we never
Yeah.
knew about an entire species and timeline of other
Yeah.
creatures until the 1700s, and
Right.
yeah,
We still don't know all
Yeah.
the species of things on this earth, right?
No.
In the oceans and whatnot.
yeah,
The
yeah.
deep ocean that we have no clue about. We might, you know what? We might also dive into the theory that this might just be another human cycle
Right.
that has existed.
That's
We
one of
could have
many, or-
had different human cycles in the past, ancient civilizations, etc.
Yeah.
Like we don't
Yeah.
know. We kind of just like boom, like it was kind of a big bang where you're like Big Bang, humans were like,
Yeah.
and then it's like, what are these pyramids doing? What is this happening?
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
and we're waking up to this like Earth that has so much history on it that we have no
That we're just starting to
database
like, literally
on,
scratch the surface on.
right?
Yeah.
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 So there's that too.
Yeah, even like look at flood literature across different religions and continents, and how they all talk about this worldwide flood from like some ancient Sumer to the Epic of Gilgamesh that wiped out humanity when it was in an advanced stage. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, I wonder how much of that has just already happened.
Yeah.
And a few months ago, I was talking to, actually, Mike and I were talking to a physicist, Marvin Herschel, while we were at the cabin. And it's funny, his job right now, and he said it so casually too, he's creating a dark matter detector. Like, just said it so nonchalant. He's like, I'm creating a dark matter detector.
A physician? Yeah, I'm in.
And I'm like, oh, last night I watched, like, I binged a Netflix series. But he was talking about how in physics right now, they don't even consider the Big Bang to be the beginning of the universe. They think it's just one of potentially hundreds of
Multiple.
thousands of Big Bangs across different dimensions.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's mind blowing to think about.
Yeah. And I did some research on Kabbalah and Kabbalahism like a long time ago. And like in that, they had like a story where one of the human cycles, they were much more advanced than we are. And they had two different alien species live on Earth with the humans, but they were all matriarchs, and it was in shape of a Kabbalah sign. So every like circle had their own like civilization, and then one of the like alien species didn't get along with the humans, and then that wiped out a cycle somehow because they weren't getting along. So it just like everyone died from that. But Kabbalahism is from like sacred geometry from Leonardo da Vinci's stuff, like old stuff that you just wouldn't hear nowadays.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's interesting.
Actually, a bunch of early like Christian mystics ended up going into Gnosticism and into Kabbalism as well.
Interesting.
And that's something that makes me think, you know, just with the depth to everything in science and culture and creation and space and the ocean, it makes me think that, you know, there's something that incepted it. And I'm not getting religious at all, but it just feels like, okay, there's more to our lives than the simple day in and day out.
Yeah.
We've challenged our audience before too. It's like, okay, why were you put here? Like, who are you supposed to encourage today, or who you're supposed to make feel loved today? And yeah, it's hard to believe it's just all a matter of randomness, especially if we're talking about something like higher beings or spirituality, etc. It's
Well, and then there's the Fibonacci sequence, which ties that in like that. If we're living the Fibonacci sequence, everyone is in their own pace at that in those, spaces of where we're at in the sequence.
Yeah.
So,
And I love, it was in Lord of the Rings where Gandalf, and I'm going to butcher the quote, is talking to one of the hobbits. And he's like, life isn't changing the world or something like that. It's the simple, greeting your neighbor. It's the simple encouraging of one another. It's those things that change the world. It's being the light in the darkness that change the world around you. So, and that
Good
ties
old
into what you're
Gandalf.
doing too.
Yeah.
It's just
and then
being there for people.
Yeah.
And then physics, like tie into physics. It's like, it's amazing that this is actually calculated. And like now they're, like you said, the Big Bang, they're now thinking there's a multiple of Big Bangs. They're also studying a black hole that is producing like actual audio.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys knew this in the last month or something. Physicians have discovered that one of the black holes that was discovered recently is doing audio. Like it's just, you can hear it, or there's an audio of it.
And I don't remember if it was on one of our episodes or on one of the NAPS episodes, but the first ever discovered black hole was in 2020. The first observed black hole.
It was talked about for years, right?
But the first observable one. And the Russian Institute of Science started measuring something to do with radioactivity going into the hole and coming out of the hole. And immediately celebrity science like Neil deGrasse Tyson, et cetera, saying, well, that's probably evidence of dimension, but those are most likely like pocket dimensions, very small. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, are you saying we have evidence that there's, another dimension? And then even hearing about how it's no longer just out there to think that there's at least 10, 15, 20 other dimensions beyond our own.
Yeah. Well,
And we're living on the third one, and
Right.
we have access to others, but maybe not in this realm of existence, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me that the first dimension is just a line, the second is, we're going on the paper, and then the third is the cube, and then the fourth is actually 4 cubes.
Yeah.
So that would mean that parallel universes exist, and that we're just repeating the same thing over and over again, or at least a repetitive pattern of some sort.
An example we've used, and I've used it way too much, is the 2-dimensional stick figure, right? It's like, can you imagine us sticking our 3-dimensional hand into his 2-dimensional world and him trying to describe what he's seeing? Like, he wouldn't have the words to try and describe what was coming into his dimension.
Right. Like an ant. They say that an ant has a 2-dimensional reality.
And it's like, how many of these interactions with the paranormal are similar to that, right? It's people trying to describe or put words to something that's beyond their capability. I mean, even words like eternity, people are like, oh, eternity's a long time. It's like, well, no, it's outside of time. It's not a long time. It's not a short time. It's not
has
time.
nothing to do with time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really mind-boggling to be like, wow, we don't even know what we don't know.
I know. It would probably blow our minds, to be honest, to actually see it in all of it. So I mean, we're here. We're in the third, and it's okay.
Here we are.
But you're right about human, where we're at on an evolutionary skill too. With the humans, it's like we're so young in discovering everything.
And there's a group of scientists called IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and they're world leading scientists in their fields, and they study things like prayer healers, and like they have this study where they watch like warmth transfer from the prayer healer's hands to the person's body. They had a study where they did supposedly they weighed the human soul, where they had hundreds of people who donated their bodies into these like micrometer scales, and then the person would die and it would go down the exact same in each and every tube, something like that.
Whoa.
And again, this isn't some paranormal scientific group, which, guys, I love paranormal investigators. That's what we can be called. But these are people that are at the edge of science that are conducting this. And again, they're kind of going back to the direction of these old school scientists who were both like, no, like there's a spiritual realm and
Right.
there's
Yeah.
science.
Willing to acknowledge that they, that there's some things that we just have no idea. And,
Yeah.
you know,
And people want to categorize it black and white, religious or science. You know, it's just, there's a gray zone. We're
Yes.
in a gray zone, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
the gray zone could borderline any of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's that closed-mindedness of people sometimes that you're
Yes.
like either religion or either science. Like, it's not that simple.
There's definitely areas of overlap. And
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you, Erika. This was
thank you.
a lively time. We've got quite a few ideas for collaborations with Erika in the future. But Erika, where can people find you at? Where can they find your podcast or contact you, etc.?
Yeah. So my podcast is on Spotify. So Erika's Ghost Stories. And I'm on Instagram as well. Erika's Ghost Stories.
Awesome.
Yeah.
easy to remember.
Thank you.
I just I listened to your Banff Springs one today.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
I did like
It's
it.
quick. I mean, it's like a quick, here's the ghost stories.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
But I liked that.
That's
it was
perfect.
like,
Yeah.
I was
I know,
at
right?
work. I was like, oh, that's a nice little,
Aw,
10
thank
minutes
you.
just to
Yeah.
enjoy.
My
Oh,
favorite
thanks.
YouTube videos by far are when I YouTube something and the people get straight to it. And then there's other ones where it's like the first 5 minutes of them is talking about what they're going to do or introducing it. And I'm just like, skip.
Yeah, I think that's also my attention span. So
Yes,
it's like, get right to it,
Yeah.
Jump into it. and
Yeah, I should start a YouTube too.
You should. Absolutely. And
That'd
yeah,
be
we won't spoil anything, but we're excited to work with Erika in the future.
Yeah, I'm so excited too.
So yeah, that wraps up our time for today. Tonight we talked about Erika's podcast. We talked about the paranormal. We talked about some of the different Canadian instances of ghost stories. And then we took a deep dive into the universe and
Yes.
meaning and life. And
I love it.
I love that that's what we can do here on Midnight Mysteries. Again, Erika, thank you for joining us. Do you know someone who's encountered a ghost or who has been involved in some sort of paranormal activity? Leave your thoughts in the comments below or send us a message, and we'd love to see you next time on Midnight Mysteries. Once again, I'm your host, Nathan.
And I'm Mike.
We'll catch you next time.